I recently found this sub, and by recently I mean less than an hour ago, and decided on posting a story that I usually repress, but it every so often comes flooding back to my memory. In the 8th grade, I had a stalker, one that I never saw, and one that never said anything in malice towards me. Back in the 8th grade, probably halfway through the school year, I received a phone call from an unknown caller. Usually, I would not answer for a number I didn't recognize, or sometimes I would do so in an accent, but I would always hang up after a second or two. Things changed, however. When the second I answered, I heard a man say my full name in a questioning tone, like if he was asking for confirmation that this was me. Being just a kid and thinking this was one of my parents' friends or someone who I could talk to, I told him that that was me. Big mistake, but I didn't know at the time. The first phone call I don't remember much of, except that he hung up not long after I said that was me. Some time passed, maybe less than a week, when I got an unknown call again. I didn't answer, and then I kept getting spam calls. So I finally answered, and this guy was asking me about what shows I like to watch. I got the idea that maybe I shouldn't be talking to this guy, so I just hung up. Not much longer, another couple calls came in until I said to stop calling me, and he responded something to the effect of, "Hanging up in mid-conversation is rude." My dad heard me and asked who I was talking to, so I told him that I didn't know and handed him the phone. My dad asked who this was and to stop calling my number in his angry dad tone. Then he got a confused face for a second before getting really angry and shouting at them before they abruptly hung up. My dad later told me that this person knew my father's name, Carlos, and had told him, "Don't be so angry, Carles," before hanging up. Pretty soon, these calls would happen at least once a day, and I would almost always hand the phone to my dad for him to yell at the guy. We told our friends and family to stop if they were prank calling me. We tried getting police involved, and we also contacted my middle school saying there was a guy being creepy with me. The guy never called during school hours, and he usually would call at first when I was home alone, but soon switched it up to calling around the time my father got home from work. This guy sounded young. For a long time we thought my uncles or their friends were playing pranks on us. He sounded maybe mid to late 20s and sounded sort of Latino. Never had an angry tone and never said anything malicious. But he was a stalker, and he knew the names of my parents, sister, my dogs, some cousins, and my grandparents. He never called when we had company over, and it was never after like 8 p.m. At one point, I was sitting in my room and got a call. By this point, it was nearing the last few weeks of school, and because this guy never said anything bad and the police said there was nothing to do, I just answered the phone and asked what he wanted. I remember clear as day, he was listing off video games. Red Dead Redemption, Modern Warfare 2, Halo 3, etc. I looked to my disc stand and saw he was reading off the list in order that my games were, top to bottom. I stood up and looked out the window, but nobody was there. After the list was done, I just stood there, and he told me something about me having good taste in games and that we should play sometime. At this moment, I was scared shitless. I cried and called my dad. He came home early, and we realized, like idiots, that we could just change my number. We changed my number, and I purged my Facebook account, and we all set our accounts on private. Maybe 6 months later we moved, and after changing the number I never got calls from this guy. The reason I came to tell this story is because I've been getting unknown numbers calling me for the past couple days, and I never answer them anymore, but telling my girlfriend about it, she reminded me about the guy. So, I will be changing my number soon, as a precaution. I'm going to put a little disclaimer at the beginning of this story. It is a little bit sexual in places, not in like a bad way, not any kind of abuse, but it is a little bit dirty, so if you don't want to listen to that, then don't listen to it. Okay. When I was in my second year of university, I lived alone. It was a downstairs flat with my bedroom facing towards the street. I had some heavy green curtains, so I didn't mind too much. My friends lived about a 15-minute walk away, and I would go over every day till sometimes around 3 or 4 a.m., or I would sleep over. I had a long-distance boyfriend at the time, so I would sometimes be up late Skype sexting. Halloween rolls around, and I'm out with my friends. I decide to go back to mine and be a sexy Skype supergirl for my boyfriend. We get into it, we're having a great time, curtains closed, lights off, just to be safe. I'd had a drunk man try to get in one time. I fell asleep early and left the curtains open. It had been super creepy. I woke up to the sounds of someone trying to push open the front door. When I looked up, there was a man staring, stood so close his nose almost touched the window. I'd freaked out and spent the night in the living room. So, the lights were off, curtains shut. I noticed a kind of flickering in my peripheral and looked around. While meeting at the bottom, the curtains parted very slightly near the top. Through the gap, there appears to be a trail of steam rising. I cover myself and get up to investigate. I have to get up and stand on my tiptoes to see through. The source of the steam was a man's mouth, hunched over and panting, exposed at the waist, violently stroking his member. I try to quickly rearrange the curtains, grabbing my laptop and hiding in the living room. A few days later, there is a pink envelope waiting for me when I walk through the door. As I pick it up, various small change falls out. Written on the lip of the envelope in jagged capital letters, "I mean you no harm, XXX. A horrible cold feeling spread throughout my body, dread overlapped by shock. I'd never felt anything like it. I turned the card over to read the address side, there in the same handwriting, to the girl in the front room. Opening it, I see it's a quite traditional sort of card, cream-colored with delicate watercolor of a bouquet on the front. Thinking of you, written in gold curvature next to it. The inside was completely covered by a message, written in capital letters, some letters backwards, and words misspelled. I gave the card to the police, so I can't recite the whole passage verbatim, but the essence was, I'm an old man who has lived on the street for a long time. I wasn't sure if he meant my street or the streets in general. You made me the happiest I've ever been in my life on Halloween. I am sorry I scared you. You are very beautiful. I love to watch you whether you are working on your computer or touching yourself. Please leave your curtains open just a little bit for me. For each time you do this, I will post a couple of pounds through the letterbox. Signed, Ken, XXXXXX. I called my friends, then got the police to come round. Basically, they couldn't really do anything. They took the card as evidence, gave me a case number, and said that they would get the patrol car to drive past my house for the near future. I stayed at my friend's for a week and had one of them stay over at mine after that. That wasn't quite the last of Ken. Sometimes there would be a knocking at my window, but kept my curtains 100% closed. 3 or 4 months of no incidents later, we got snow. I was leaving my house. Now, in the habit of checking my curtains every time I left or got back to the house, I see a set of footprints tracing the entire front window, back and forth, like someone had been pacing. After I moved, my friend had a job where she could check the local electoral register. We did find that a K. Mordu lived on my previous street. We did no further investigations because it was a studentry area. I would walk past that house on my way home for the next 2 years. A while after I'd moved out, I saw that the windows had been completely covered in newspaper, stuck from the inside. Seemed like someone was having trouble with Ken still coming around. Let's not meet again, Ken, okay? So, I'm not sure if this is the right subreddit or if Let's Not Meet was better, but this happened to me when I was 20. I'm 31 now. So in my early 20s, I was single and bored, so I used to just chat with guys on different dating sites. Black Planet, Meetup, and just random sites I could find on my Android Play Store. Most of the guys talked about sex, no surprise, but I talked to some who were actually cool. One ended up being one of my best friends for the past 9 years now. I have several crazy stories from people I've talked to on these apps, but I'll just talk about one for now. This one particular guy, Manny, seemed cool too. We would chat on the app Word2Go. We eventually exchanged numbers after a few months and talked a lot. Then we started hanging out. We'd go to movies, out to eat, etc. I decided I trusted him enough to go over to his house. So I'm over there and we start talking, and of course one thing leads to another and we're making out like crazy. He then tries to take my top off, but I stop him and tell him we gotta stop. He starts saying things like, "I really like you. I just want to be with you. You don't know what you mean to me." Blah blah blah. All that stuff guys say to try to get a girl to sleep with them. I hate when people try to pressure me to do anything, and I didn't know how to be assertive back then. So, me being a timid, shy 20-year-old, I gave in. He starts to go in, and I stop him again and pull out a condom. He seemed disappointed I made him wear one. The sex was okay. I wasn't really into it because I hated he talked me into it. So anyway, we finish and I leave. I don't want to talk to him again. So about 2 or 3 weeks go by, and he texts me finally asking how I am. I say I'm fine. He asks, have I been to the doctor lately? I start freaking out, and in my mind thinking maybe he had an STD and that's why he asked about the doctor. I say, no, why? This nut says, because of the baby. I say, what baby? He then says, I thought you would be pregnant by now. I'm so confused at this point. I ask him why again. He has the nerve to tell me he put a hole on the condom so he could get me pregnant. I flip out and start text yelling, why would you do that? What's wrong with you? He said he really liked me and thought I would date him if he got me pregnant. Now you may ask, how could I not know he poked a hole in the condom? I saw him put it on, but had my back turned to him at one point during the whole thing. That's probably when he did it. Needless to say, I freaked out. I deleted and blocked him on every single thing I had him on. Facebook, Twitter, his calls, texts, everything. I went to the doctors and made sure I got a pregnancy and STD test. Thank God everything was okay.